Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the
You Don't Look Like an Engineer podcast.
Today we're really excited because we have someone joining us from the UK, someone that we actually have followed for a long time, and we really admire her work and the way she can articulate feelings and situations that we as humans go through. So today, Annalie, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're from and just a little bit about your story.
Of course. Well, I think thank you for having me on. And as we just chatted off air, I'm really excited about having this conversation with you both because it when we were emailing and arranging this, it resonates with me so much. You know, my first career, my big career was in the construction and property industry in the UK. So I think a lot of the conversation we're going to have today is going to be a bit of a walk down memory lane for me and having that reflective space with both of you. I don't think I've had that conversation really. I sort of tell my story, but I don't think I've told my story to people that will resonate like with you two and sort of with your audience. I'm really excited actually for me to kind of go back into that space and kind of honor it a bit. So we've been connected through social media, which is brilliant. Annalie Howling, and I'm a performance coach. So I work with a lot of elite athletes, Hollywood actors, corporate athletes, as you would call it, and sort of some of the CEO and C-suite in usually financial services, but tech and other really interesting industries. And then I do a lot of work individually, one-to-one. So I've specialised in trauma. So I've just got back from New York and worked on family death, assault, accident, injury, growing up in violent childhood. So those are individuals that I work with, helping them kind of liberate themselves from the stories that shame have told you. And I started my career, as I mentioned, sort of looping back full circle in the construction and property industry in London, in the UK, and I loved it for years and years. And I had a catastrophic burnout just before my 30th birthday. Like, I'm coming up for 43 now, and I was 29, and it was horrendous. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just thought that, it was a food intolerance. So I went to go and get that test and cut out gluten, or I thought it was, I needed to add something on, like change up my exercise routine, or I was basically reaching for every band-aid or intervention rather than addressing the elephant in the room. And I now know the elephant in the room was that I didn't have any work-life balance, but also I was trying to outrun my own trauma. And so that kind of perpetual cycle of sprinting a marathon is unsustainable, obviously. And so that's sort of what led to the burnout. Then that led to me having a coaching session with one of my best friends. And at the time, coaching was super woo-woo and weird. Like, Billions hadn't been out. Wendy Rhodes wasn't making it desirable for people. And it was so transformative for me. It got to me in a way that other say, I don't know, classes or training courses or things like that hadn't ever resonated with me in that way before. And so as I am a type A, hence having burnout, I was like, I need to find everything out about coaching. What is this coaching? I need to know all about it. So I quit my job. But I went freelance in the same industry, still in construction and property, just to free up a little bit more time, but still, work in that area. Took myself off to the States and just drenched myself in all things coaching and did all the courses I could lay my hands on and the certifications. And that is, 12 or so years ago now.
Wow. It goes by so fast, doesn't it?
First of all, oh my goodness, I'm so happy that you can come on the other side and be telling your story, because it takes a lot of courage to, one, identify what the root of the issue is and be able to speak about it so bravely. Also, I can't believe your age. You're absolutely stunning.
Still.
I want your lifestyle routine, whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, you need to create a separate whole page about that, because I think there will be a large following.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Also, so interested also to know about the work that your friend did to help you and the barriers it helped you overcome, but also minorly concerned because the problems you're talking about, having this burnout and it manifesting in other ways in like, terms of physical health and mental health, and not knowing what it is like sounding like a lot of the people I work with. Yes. And a lot of my like girlfriends as well around, they'll be like, oh, I need to get tested for, I think I'm developing intolerances to food. So maybe it's not intolerances.
It's just the lifestyle, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
It wasn't intolerance, but I was intolerant to my life.
Essentially.
That's what I was intolerant. Yeah. Just like I say, I inherently knew that, I think, but you don't want to hear it. It's like when you're in a relationship or a friendship even, that has run its course, and you don't want to face the difficult truth of that. So you try and way that you can. And I'm definitely not doing the industry down. I've still got some of my best friends and I loved it. And I also know how hard that is, that industry. I was in that well before Me Too. It's a place that did really kind of, I guess, perpetuate toxic masculinity. Like, it's not easy on the guys. It wasn't easy on me, but it's not easy on the guys. It's a very difficult, they're difficult environments. Like, until the building is handed over, people don't realize this. I used to work in 5-star luxury hotel in London. That was my market in interior fit out, right? Yeah. Done unbelievable high-end luxury spaces. But you both know that's how it looks 3 days before handover. But for the 2 years before that, when you're on site, it's cold, there's no lights, like you've got things hanging off, there's no heating, like the porter cabin offices, it's grey and it's dark, and you're there, like I say, through winter months, and you've got to be on the site. Hours are very unforgiving. There's no work from home when you're doing there was none then.
None still on construction, yeah.
No, exactly. So it's a really tough environment. And in the UK, I know the construction industry to be the number one industry where men do take their own lives. So I do not underestimate the severity still of the mental health crisis. And I do believe that a lot of it's very, very taxing on you physically, mentally and emotionally. So there's no part of me kind of being flippant or saying, it was the guy's fault that I felt that way. I felt that way because, Carl Jung would have had a field day with me. I grew up in a household of violence at the hands of my father, and then went into an industry where I suppressed all of my femininity and vulnerability, right down and armored up to not show any side of that part of me, of myself, and went into what is quite a hard industry. It certainly was then, and I could get away with, in inverted commas, not showing up. I could hide parts of myself that I wasn't prepared to or didn't have the skills to deal with at that point. So, yeah, it's a really, like I say, I've had some of the best experiences of my life, because I think it's kind of a bit like being in the trenches. You really are in it together. And unless you've gone through it, it's one of those, you can't really explain it.
Firstly, sorry, just a lot happening in your early life as well. Just how you just mentioned with your father. I am curious though how, and I guess this is part of why you also didn't want to leave it, because when you overcome something like that and end up in what looks like a very successful field, and it's hard work, and it's hard work that pays off, then you feel like you've sort of made it, and leaving that is like, I don't know what I would do with myself. But how did someone who's been through that and seen the very harsh side of masculinity and its worst end up in a field that is so predominantly masculine in such harsh environments? How did you end up in construction?
Well, I think it was, well, I would now say it was the universe's plan. So, I was in an unsafe environment, aka my house, and I needed to get the F out of there. So the first sort of decent paying job to come up was, as it happened, within property, but it was in the kind of finance side of property at the time. And then I worked my way up in that, and my plan was just to always get to a place of financial security, so I didn't have to, in any way, shape or form, I could make myself safe. Fundamentally, that's what I was doing. So I'm there just like progressing and working and enjoying it. I didn't not enjoy it, but I did an MBA while I was working. I did my MBA while I was working full time, so like I was absolutely just blasting to try and get to a place where I could create safety for myself. And I viewed that as financial security. I viewed that as bricks and mortar, and not therefore being vulnerable or needing to go back to an unsafe environment. So that was like kind of how I ended up in it. But that was also, I think, my greatest lesson was, and my body stopped me. It was burnout stopped me. I was ignoring all the and the signs, like I said. And then my body just went, nah, lady, like, we're going to make you sort of so unwell that you can't do this anymore. And then, as I say, it was my friend in particular, she did a guided visualization. And I don't think I'd done some yoga, you know, had like a nice little moment in Shavasana at the end. But I don't think at that point I'd ever done anything that really accessed my subconscious. And obviously when you're doing a visualization, like, you know, it's not from the air, like it's coming from within. But the things that came up from that, which, by the way, are true now, and there's no way I could have known. Like, it was me meeting myself as, she calls it the electric woman. So you're meeting yourself as your most electric self, like you were at 10. And I met myself a few years down the line, and I had one daughter, which is what I have. I mean, you could look at probability, but still, I mean, everything has, and there was no man in the picture, and I am divorced, and like, you know, it's kind of, there's just some things you couldn't have predicted, but it just resonated with me, and it gave me hope. Because honestly, at that point in time, I think I was probably a bit depressed as well. And I couldn't see a way out, because when you work relentlessly, as I had, like so many, you two will be, and everyone in the industry, and like I say, it's freaking hard work. Like, people that are like sitting at, you know, listening to you and know the industry, it's such hard work. It really is a very honest, hard day's work, that industry, and it carries on outside, you know, long hours. And yeah, I hadn't been able to sort of shortcut my way out of that. I couldn't see how I could transfer what I was doing to something else, not forgetting I couldn't go home. It wasn't like I could go like Devil Wears Prada and like go back to my parents and go, oh, well, I'm going to wear ugly jumpers and live on my parents' couch. Like, that wasn't a choice for me. I had to keep going, but I knew that I couldn't keep going as I was. And so this session with her just gave me this hope back that there was another option for me. And if I'd felt that bad and she'd helped me, then maybe I could help other people that feel that bad.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I mean, unfortunately, out there's a lot of stories about, you know, domestic violence and violent backgrounds. So if you, by sharing your story, could inspire the people that were probably feeling the way you were feeling, it's a beautiful gift and a beautiful purpose and a beautiful reason to continue, you know, to live. I'm really intrigued to know this session that you have with your friend. Like, how did it come about? Like, was it you were like, oh my God, I have this going on, I can't deal with this anymore? Or like, how was it? How did you actually engage in it? Yeah.
You know, I think, I'm sure this will resonate with both of you, and no doubt your listeners. When you have been through the dark night of the soul and you stand the other side of it, and we're never done, right? We're always doing the work. There's always triggers and there's always life. But when you stand the other side of it, you can look at someone in pain and you can hold out your hand in whatever way that you can, right? And Nikki, my friend, she had been through this herself. So she'd had disordered eating for many, many years. And she went off to the States and had done a myriad. I'm laughing. She did all sorts of amazing courses and things that I've subsequently done with her about female sexuality and all manner of things, but where we're sort of not owning our needs and fully showing up and feeling confident to truly be ourselves in all the ways that might show up. And so she came back from there feeling that was the thing that connected and helped her overcome her eating disorder that had been with her, honestly, since very, very young. And I think she looked at me, and albeit I wasn't struggling with an eating disorder, I was struggling with a number of other things. She could see that what she held out her hand to me. That's what she did. So there was no necessarily guarantee that particular thing was going to work, but she knew, we're friends, and she knew me, and she'd obviously had that experience. And I guess I would say now I'm sort of thinking about a friend that I was out with a couple of weeks ago, and I could see the same things in her eyes. And I just said, look, I'd love to it's on me, obviously. Would you like to have a session? And it's open-ended offer. I held up my hand and she's taken it. So wow. I think if you've got any ability, whatever your ability is, just being a friend, anything at all, if you have been through it and you see someone struggling, you do hold out your hand if you've been through difficulties.
Yeah, and
shout
I guess
out to all
there's
the
a sense
Nikis.
of like,
yes, all of our lives, because we all have friends in some capacity that are there for us and help us sometimes just see the nonsense that we put ourselves through, that we like, hello, woman, pull yourself together kind of thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's also really great, is having, good friends that can just remind you of who the fuck you are as well. Like, in fact, the same friend, Nikki, she's great. The Armitage Boy from Electric Women. She, when I was going through my divorce, sent me a gift through the post and a note card, and it's a gold necklace. I wear it nearly all the time, and she has her little emblem is like a lightning bolt. So it's that on the front, and on the back it's AFH, and she wrote on it, it's Annalie Howling, so that you wear this and you remember who the fuck you are. And I was just like, and I kept the note, and obviously I keep the necklace, and that was my emblem of strength every day. So if you have a friend that can do something like that for you, and then when you've been through that, I think, and you've had someone do that for you, it is, I mean, to me, that's the ultimate act of service, and pay it forward, because I'm not in a place of pain at the moment. Like I say, I still have moments and I still get triggered and I still need help with certain things, but I feel like I have got capacity now to give and to pull people up.
Do you remember that moment when, I suppose, after you made your pivot and you shifted industries, and I suppose you were kind of working towards a new safe feeling? Like, do you remember when you actually felt safe? Like, I'm there.
Yeah. Part of that, honestly, would be having my daughter, because I think that reframed my sense of family. And I think that also reinformed that what happened to me was absolutely not my fault, because when you experience trauma, you do take on some shame, and especially if you're told that, well, I did this to you because you're bad, you were bad, so I did it, you've been naughty, you're bad, you're this, you're that. And when you're a child and you grow up with that, you do believe it, because, oh my goodness, my caregivers, my parents who are on this earth to love me, they're doing this stuff to me, so I must be really awful, like, I must be so bad. That's what you grow up believing. And even though rationally I knew it wasn't okay, there was still part of me that believed, well, I must have made him do it. I must have made him do it. I must have been too rude or whatever. And then when I had my daughter, that was a big reframe for me. You kind of step into this, I did anyway, this kind of like lioness-esque, that's my cub. And for me, that was also the never say never, but that was the moment of like, kind of choice around that I didn't want my parents having an involvement, because it's my job to keep her safe, and to me they're not safe people. So yeah, I would say that was a big reframe for me, was becoming a mother myself. And I think that reparented myself as well, without trying to sound too cliche. It offered me a lens of it really, that was nothing to do with me, and that's their own struggle, and I get to choose how I do it with her. And then also then making other choices and knowing there was another path. That was the most liberating thing, was just knowing that I could do something where I could be of service and not feel shitty every day. It was, just not feel bad, like feel like I had some control over my life, and just not feel bad and sad every day. That was, like I say, it's the hope. It's just, all you need is some hope, and then you can take it from there, because it's an energizer. People talk about like, where there's a will, there's a way. Will, fine, but that's just energy out. That's just effort. We can all like will away at stuff forever, but that can just drain and deplete you. It's hope that gives us energy.
Are you a religious person?
Very spiritual, very spooky, I call it.
No, I love that, because a lot of the times we make a relationship between the word hope and believing in a religion. And I do feel like a lot of people who are, cultivate that spiritual side of themselves, or like energy, or whatever you want to call it. I am religious myself. I think we do tend to see life differently. Like, you want to grab onto something, and you want to just make sure that, that's fuel for you. And I just wanted to ask you, but I'm really intrigued to also know, we've been talking about it, and perhaps many of our listeners know, but what would you define as trauma? Like, what is trauma? Because, we're just curious.
Sure. So I want to try and offer something that'll be really helpful to your listeners. And the thing I want to say first is, trauma does not discriminate, and also no one gets to win at trauma. So I have a lot of people saying, oh, but it wasn't that bad, or I didn't serve in the war. I think a lot of people hear PTSD and automatically we associate that with veterans, and I understand why. And I sit on the board of a charity for veterans of the armed forces in the UK, and I never charge a veteran. I do work with veterans for free. I always would, and I love that work. And the PTSD they experience is extremely real. What's interesting though is stories we may hear, you know, you go, oh my goodness, well they must have terrible PTSD about that. That might not be the thing they've got PTSD for. They trained for that. They might for something else, but I guess the sort of stereotypical or even Hollywood movie PTSD you might imagine is not always the case. You can have trauma from something you witnessed. So you could see something. I have a lot of people come to me and they've witnessed something maybe when they were in their formative years. And, you know, I had a lady come to me once and she saw... couldn't quite figure it out. Basically, she saw this group of people stood around a man and a woman, and the man was attacking the woman. And her parents, understandably, she was quite little, were like, no, come away, don't look, come away, don't look, don't worry. And I think she asked about it. And they were like, no, don't worry about it, because you probably don't want to explain to a young child. And so they weren't doing the wrong thing. But what that did was it left this unexplained scene playing, looping over and over and over in her mind. Now, that didn't happen to her. She was safe. But this clear scene of this humiliation, as it seemed, of this woman, and being the ring of people witnessing, and also not knowing exactly what was happening, so you can't find a home for it. That resonates in her system. So that can then come out as phobias. It can come out as, you know, because you don't know what this horrible thing is, but it seemed really humiliating. So I don't want to find myself in that situation. So public speaking, it can show up in things like that. You know, you become very phobic about being in concerts or in closed spaces because you don't have a home for this stuff, and trauma grows roots. But there are 5 trauma responses, and there's fight, flight, freeze, which I think most of us know about. The other 2, which are not really spoken about, are flop, pass out on the spot. Oh. So I used to give the example of, you know, you see the videos of like grooms at weddings that just pass out, like when the bride turns up, you know, or the little impala deers that they're hopping along and then they see a predator and they go, and they pass out. Like, that's flop. That. And then fawn. And fawn is the one that's the least discussed and the one that I think is the most important. And fawn is when we would go into a trauma response, but it would appear as if we're encouraging or placating the aggressor. So
like enabling.
Fawn could complete. It would look like, but what you're doing is you're keeping yourself safe. Now, there's so much shame that lives in fawn. So to just give a little bit more on this, because I want to help people out. I think the others are fairly self-explanatory. But the way trauma works is something's happening, there's a threat. Now, our system is designed to keep us safe and keep us alive. We're very clever creatures. Our system is brilliant. So what happens is when the threat, whatever it may be, is entering, the prefrontal cortex, I'm tapping the front of my forehead here for people that are just listening, all the blood goes from your prefrontal cortex and it reroutes around to the sort of towards the back to your limbic system or your amygdala, which is like the prehistoric, the animal brain, if you like, because it fires faster. Because all we need to do in this moment is stay alive. That's it. Don't need to remember what I need to get from the shops or what time I need to be somewhere. That's your prefrontal cortex, dates, times, often names, information. So all the blood's come away from there. It's in our sort of amygdala, our limbic system, ready to go. Now, our system here, again, is firing so much faster than conscious thought. And I really want to make this point clear, because I have people in my office day after day who have shame for how they reacted because they think they chose their reaction. And why didn't I do something differently? Why didn't I tell him where to go? Why didn't I why did I kiss him back when I didn't want to? Okay, you did not choose it. It was selected for you to keep you safe in this situation. Okay, so it's fired really fast. A trauma response has been elicited. In this example, we're going with fawn. Now, fawn could show up in work. I'm sure we've all had a pretty narcissistic boss. I definitely had. I had a boss that used to belittle me, who used to tell me that everyone was judging me, who used to, he made up a story and went to the group CMO that I was going for interviews as another company when I wasn't, and not forgetting that, I need to stay safe because I need to pay for my flat because I can't possibly go home. I mean, that was terrifying to me. And so I had to be nice to this guy who was just actively trying to who knows exactly what his rationale was, probably jealousy, but it was horrific to go through that. So I had to fawn and placate to an aggressor. Now, in a more serious environment, in situations that I get into a lot with work, and I'm just going to precursor this with a trigger warning, I am going to talk about sexual assault. So I have a huge amount of sexual assault cases that come to see me. And in most of those scenarios, it's never recent, sadly. I never get someone that it's just happened to. It's always a few years down the line. And what is usually in that story is someone will believe there's a grey area. Oh, well, I did know him. He was a friend of a friend. We had a kiss earlier in the night. I did say he could come back, but I did say no, you know. And then I always, at this point, this is fawning, because the person's saying, well, I don't understand. I was really scared in that moment. Why did I kiss him? I don't understand. I didn't want him there. I know I didn't want him there. Why would I have said blah, blah, blah? And it's fawn. You're so afraid. And if you think about the trauma responses again, like I had a case, and there is some wickedness in this world that I didn't, you know, before sort of doing this work, I couldn't have comprehended. And having had a violent childhood, I'm not grateful for what happened to me, but it's made me better at my job, because I'm able to be with things that I think, potentially I'm able to be with things more easily because of having gone through what I've gone through. And I've had premeditated, like no question, it was absolutely premeditated. It was just waiting for the right victim, if you like. And there was, I've got to be very careful what I say, but there was a sustained attack over many hours, and the worst kind of thing that you could imagine, that you could ever imagine. And at one point, the victim said to me, I thought I was going to die. I absolutely thought I was going to die. I didn't think I could tolerate this possibly anymore. And so I acted like I was, in inverted commas, up for it, because I was like, well, maybe this is, and sure enough, that was the thing that ended up allowing them to escape, because they acted as though they were up for it, and then suggested carrying on at another location. And then when they went to leave, thank God there was someone on a stairwell that had obviously seen, you know, and asked for help, and the police were called, and thank goodness that was indeed the way to get out. So what I want to say is, I see people all the time, but that person believed that in some way they were encouraging it, or at fault, or that they'd had some part in this, and they'd had a few drinks first. That's another one. I had a couple of drinks that evening.
Yeah, right.
You did not deserve. This is not. You did not deserve that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's not a license to be ill-treated in any way.
Yeah.
Of course not. But there is a narrative about, well, you've had some drinks and you were at a party, or there was a friend of a friend, you know, there ends up being this narrative. And with trauma, as I say, this fawn response is elicited for you. You don't choose it. It acts much quicker than conscious thought. And in that scenario, okay, you cannot escape. So fight, you can't fight the aggressor off you. Flight, there is nowhere to run. You've been locked into a place. Freeze, that's not going to help us right now. Flop, that's really not going to help us right now. I mean, it's kind of how you're feeling, like, you know, that's going to make you more unsafe. The only one left is fawn. It's the only one left to try and keep you alive. So I know that people will listen to this, and I think you two are listening to it and nodding a bit, because, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You're having...
definitely have heard similar stories of friends around me, and ended up being, I don't know, the worst sort of outcome I could think of, where they ended up dating the person longer so that they wouldn't feel like something terrible had happened, which is because they just felt like somehow they were illicit in that as well. And it's just so sad that you'd prolong, you know, being with someone that's perpetrated you.
Trauma leaves you with shame. So victims of domestic relationships, you know, you have the shame, exactly to your point about your friend, like, why am I, and you feel worthless. Maybe you have shame has a language, which is always an I am, like my I am with my
thing,
exactly. So I am bad. Theirs might be I am weak. Well, if I'm weak, I'm never going to get out of this. I'm never going to get a better person. I'm never going to get a better job. I'll just stay in this situation. But I really want to get across to people that fawn is a very real thing. It is, thank goodness, being spoken about more. The holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicola Perra, has started to talk about it a lot more. Her work is fantastic. I've got some videos out on YouTube if people are interested in finding out more. Like, it will go into my book as well, which I know we'll come on to. But I really just want people to know that this is something that is, you didn't choose it. It was done to keep you alive. Your body did it, and there in no way, shape or form is there a grey area, and you did not do anything, you know, to encourage a situation or anything like that, and not to minimise either. I always get people going, oh, but so-and-so had it worse, or, oh, but, you know, I had someone this weekend say, but it wasn't my first time, as in that wasn't where I lost my virginity. And I just said, please don't minimise. Like, this is, doesn't matter that was not your first sexual experience. It was almost as if she was sort of saying that, well, I'd had sexual experiences before, and it's like, no, there are no grey areas. So I know it's probably not a subject area you thought we were going to dive into, but that is just something that's very real and happens a lot. And I think it does put us into all manner of situations, whether it's relationships, work, environments, where we, if you like, are living to what we believe, and our underlying limiting beliefs are telling us that we're worthy of. So certainly for me, I stayed in relationships, jobs and places that at the time, sort of pre-healing, as I would call it, I felt were aligned with who I was then. And I thought I was helpless, hopeless and weak. So I stuck in situations that spoke to that.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you jump into that, because we actually, I'm going to be completely honest with you, we wrote down that question about limiting beliefs. So I'm like, wow, look how this is transitioning into this.
Like the specific, if I was to read what we wrote, is like, we literally wanted to know how people can cope with trauma, because, quote, like literally we wrote, like, life doesn't wait for everything to be okay before it kicks the bucket, you know, like your work is going to keep going, and things, unfortunately, in personal and life tend to also spiral out of control, and so many people deal with that day to day, and also impacts.
Yeah, and as you were saying, Annalie, like, maybe the trauma, I love how you introduced that, ends up by saying doesn't compete. It, like, trauma doesn't compete.
Yeah,
because it's true. Like, there's certain situations in our life that, you know, you might have the same reaction to someone at work. It might not be, you know, to the extent of that specific awful situation of, like, the sexual assault that we were talking about, but it feels threatening to you at that exact time, because it brings you back to something that you saw when you were a child, a story, or like a core memory, I'm gonna call it, or I don't know the term for it, but, you know, it takes you back then. You feel like your heart is out of your chest, and you're like, but this person just gave me feedback on something, or this person just, you know, there's many times that people is, unfortunately, in this industry and the job that we do, people scream at you just because you did something wrong, and you have to, you know, just stand up there and not say anything, because you're like, what the hell do I do to this person that just scream at me? And then your manager is there, and you're like, what do I do? And you don't want to enable them. You just, look, I'm looking for a solution here, but that's not correcting them. That's not setting a boundary for yourself. So these things do show up, and the way we react is it's really important to identify that. So I'm really happy that you are going into limiting beliefs, because we want to help people that are listening. How can they identify their limiting beliefs when they started the healing journey?
Sure. So, again, I want to try and give us, it's, my whole thing is I'm trying to remove privilege from good help, because I think there's a lot of, hey, sign up to my course for $99 and I'll cure your anxiety forever. And it's like, are you there? And then for me, I see people that are vulnerable, and that's targeting vulnerable people in pain. And then when that doesn't work, inevitably, then they feel like even more of a failure. And to me, that's just so upsetting, because no one's broken. Shame tells you that you are. And then there are people out there that are sort of selling these so-called solutions. Then when they don't work, you feel even worse. Well, there must be something wrong with me, because all these people did it for $99 and they're all cured. So why not me? So I want to try and impart as many things that are actually of use as possible. So for me, the most powerful tool is self-reflection. Now, I think that's a little bit different to journaling. You could go through journals, and journal to me is more of like a day-to-day, and it's very clever because it's draining your short-term memory overload because we've got too much going on for what we were designed for. Like our short-term memory is brilliant. If you think about it like a hard drive in a computer, that's where we store everything. Like, oh, I've got to go there tomorrow. I've got to do the podcast. I've got to go and get my daughter. I've got to do this, you know, and like things that you're thinking about. But it was also designed for a time that our only thing we had to think about was go and get some wood and I ought to eat later, you know, like, so we've got way too much in our hard drive. We constantly need to like update the RAM, right? So journaling is a really great way of like downloading that, like writing down your to-do lists even, and putting your pen to paper is an act as well of like discharging some of the stress, and you can physically see it transferred to somewhere else. So that activity in itself is a good way of like sort of draining the vessel, if you like, and freeing up some space. You know, let's clean the hard drive bit and free up the space. That's helpful. Self-reflection is a different thing. Self-reflection is a way of really understanding what's at the root of these things. I'm just going to give like another example of a trauma, because I think the ones that I've talked about seem, again, people go like, well, I didn't have sexual assault and I didn't have someone shouting in my face at work. When I went through my divorce, and it was still kind of lockdown-ish, so a lot of it was done on screens. I was with my team physically, but it was done through a screen with the other side. And my ex-husband and I have a really good relationship, by the way, so there's no ag there, but it is an acrimonious thing that you go through. His barrister was horrendous, and when I'm not just saying that, like my entire team, everyone was like, what on earth is happening here? He was screaming, he was pointing, it was, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Go and get a job. You need to get a job. I've always had a job, by the way. Always had a job. Like, who, you know, he referred to me as being well presented, which I don't know what that had to do with anything. Like, it was so personal. It was just screaming and shouting and a constant attack. It was lies. You brought nothing in. I'm like, oh, like the house I sold. Like, it was just madness, right? But it was horrible. And even though I knew, and my whole team were there going, God, that was really unprofessional and inappropriate, and that was really weird, and you know, you shouldn't have had to go through that. And I was like, okay. And I sort of stumbled out of there like Bambi, like, oh my God, what happened? And then I started having nightmares. And then those nightmares started becoming, I would be driving into the supermarket, and if I felt like I was taking too long to park or something like that, I would get overwhelmed and drive off. And then I started ordering groceries online. And then I started avoiding certain shops altogether and didn't want to go to places at certain times when it might be busy. And then I went, you need to go and deal with this, because that's what happens. And that's a man screaming at me through a Zoom call, right? About things that I know are not true. Okay. And I had a group of people telling me it's not true and you're okay and you're safe. But that started to take roots, and I started to change my behavior. And that's what I sort of want to get across to people is, like, I had somebody that witnessed someone unable to make the toilet on a plane and lost control. Not them, didn't happen to them. And I actually don't know if that other person was upset by it or not. Like, seatbelt signs are on, you can't get up. You know, very bad turbulence, you can't go to the loo. Things happen. And but this person, having seen that, witnessing the trauma, took on the humiliation. Now this has grown roots and has got to the point where they weren't, if they were taking a flight, wouldn't even drink water. So then imagine how lightheaded and anxious you feel then, because they're so paranoid about potentially that thing happening to them as well. So I just want to talk about, like, it's always something, you know, an event happens, and then, for example, you being shouted at work, like, could then come to you not asserting yourself next time, or not in the same way, or not naming, you know, not showing up as much as you might like, because you understandably want to avoid being in a situation where that person was in fight. Sounds like a colleague may have been in freeze, and you may well have been in freeze/fawn in that moment, which is completely understandable. Because again, if we look at, I'm just going to make stuff up, probably height, seniority, you know, there is a rank in that system. So, you know, what choices do you have? And that's what trauma does, or it can do if it's left untreated. So I just sort of want to normalize for people the day-to-day scenarios and how it can manifest. It's when you notice that you're starting to change behavior and you're not honestly living, you know, as you would have done before, say, this certain event, and reflecting on these things and getting really honest, and how is it showing up and what am I afraid of? It's like if you've ever gone diving, you've got to go layer by layer. You can't go straight to the bottom, otherwise you get the bends. You've got to just decompress decompress. And that's what self-reflection does. It allows you to go to the bottom of your own ocean, open up your own Pandora's box, we'll call it that, and go through it. So that, and there's like, I've got something on my website, but there's a lot of people that have got great things for free on YouTube about reflecting and self-reflection. So it's different, and that can help you get into the underlying limiting belief, which is acting like a pair of glasses that you're seeing the world through. Like so my helpless, hopeless and weak obviously came from a childhood of violence, but also had an attempted burglary where I froze. And I wished that I'd done everything except that, banged on the window or run after him or whatever, but I froze. And that told me that I was helpless, hopeless and weak. And if anything scary ever happened again, that's how I believed I would react. And so I'm wearing these glasses of helpless, hopeless and weak. And that's where I'm choosing relationships from. That's where I'm choosing jobs from. That's where I'm, choosing challenges or not. That's how I believe I am as an individual. So that's what's shaping my life. And it's those statements that we need to get a hold of and really challenge them. And then when we've got a hold on those, doing some work, whatever that might be. And I'm a big believer in it being more body-based, because talking is really great. And if that works for you, then fantastic. But trauma is stored in the body. So, breath work is fantastic. That can be done online if you feel a bit weird about it. There are loads of brilliant things online. You don't have to have the camera on. You can just have a go and see how you feel and just allow things to come out of your body. Like I've done 2 breaths sometimes and burst into tears, which is evident that something needed to move. I see you guys not
can relate.
Literally last week, I think, Laura, you'd sent me something. Hey.
A YouTube video, and I was like, Sohan, I did this and I couldn't even go past the second round because I was in tears. And it's so random because I was like, I'm fine. Ready to go. Woo. And then, I'm crying and I can't stop, but it was good to get it out.
Yeah, anything that gets you, if you find yourself really in your head, the way to get out of your head is to get into your body. So obviously exercise, but going for a walk is great. And if you need to have difficult conversations, doing a walk is great because you're side by side with somebody. So it's not as intense as like having to do like eye contact, but you've still got that connection, that sense of safety. And as you're moving, you're actively discharging stress from your body because you're in movement. And obviously there's the other benefits of being outside in nature. And then your eyes are scanning the horizon bilaterally, which is keeping your prefrontal cortex online. So the same way, you have good conversations when you're driving, like the same thing, is you're scanning the whole time. So a bit like when you're doing so breath counting, why is it good? Because you're keeping your prefrontal cortex online. So when you're doing like a emotional breathwork release, say with somebody, or you're doing that thing on YouTube, or people, if you're feeling anxious, what are 5 things you can touch, see, say, or count to 5, things like that. It's because you're going into your, again, amygdala, limbic system in the response state. By doing a count or something cognitive, you're bringing your prefrontal cortex back online. So that's a good way of like regulating yourself. But I think if you're finding that you need to do that often, there's work to be done under the bonnet, and just not to be afraid of it. Like, please don't be afraid of it. The best work I've ever done in my life is saying things that I believe to be so shameful about myself and then being received by everybody. I don't think there's one person that is in my life that hasn't received me since I've named things that I felt deeply shameful about. And yet I felt they trapped me before.
Yeah, I've heard a quote about shame, and it's something to do that. Well, I mean, I don't know if it was a quote or it was a conversation with a friend, but we were talking about this.
Quoted now.
And I remember, and I remember that she was like, every time that I say something that I'm ashamed of, is like, like as soon as I said it out loud, it's like less of a scary thing. It's like, well, I just said it out loud, so that is actually unlocking a little bit of, bravery and courageous, I guess, attitude out of me. So yeah, maybe it was a conversation. But anyway, I'm intrigued because, when we do self-reflection and we look at ourselves, I got caught up with something that you said, in this specific situation that you mentioned, your example when you felt weak and, well, you said to yourself that you were weak. Those are actually feelings or like situations that we experience. And is it that our brain is hijacking and is telling us our, like, a story completely different from who we truly are as, like, you know, human beings? You know, we are all worthy of love and we're great, and, you know, we're not inadequate, we are good. So is it just that because of everything that is happening around you, is it just that your brain is literally hijacking you just to keep you alive, or what's going on there?
Yeah, it's almost like a paradox. Well, it kind of is. So clever system has done this thing to keep us alive. Great, thank you. You know, and however, what it's not doing is, so shame is a felt sense. It's actually very hard to talk about shame. I give this example a lot. So it's an I am statement. And when I do work with clients, we find the I am. So the I ams I get: I'm a failure, I am weak, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I am broken, I am rejected, I am alone, I am unsafe, I am out of control, I am bad. You know, these are hard. I'm saying these, and you two, I can feel like the energy shift, and horrible things to say. And then it's felt within you. And so my beliefs, as I said, growing up, was that I am bad. And that's, you know, and if I was to say to you two right now, oh, girls, do you know what? Bit of a rush this morning, getting my daughter up to school. Felt like I didn't do brilliantly, like should have, I don't know, set the alarm a bit early, whatever. That's me feeling a bit guilty. But if I said to you, oh, girls, this morning was an absolute disaster, I am a bad mother, genuinely, I feel physically ill saying that. And that's not true. I don't believe I'm a bad mother at all. But that's shame.
Yeah, okay.
So shame is I am. And if I asked you two now to think about an I am that may have been true for you in the past: I am not enough, I am a failure, I'm unworthy, I'm alone. You know, it's I'm stupid, I am hopeless. You know, it's horrible. It makes you feel unwell. So yes, shame is the stains, as I call it, that gets left behind from trauma. But when we understand what trauma is and why it's serving us, that's how I believe we can release shame. And the only cure for shame is self-compassion. So if I was to give you an example about how people can do that for themselves, so there was a situation when I was growing up that used to haunt me, and my father punched me in the face in a restaurant when I was about my daughter's age, and my nose bled everywhere, you know. And for years and years and years and years and years, that would haunt me because I'm a bad girl. I must have been so bad to make him do that. And I could see all the faces of people in the restaurant, like it was in Spain, and I could see the people like kind of doing like different, like how to stop a nosebleed, like ice or a napkin, you know, like all the different like ways to do it. And the worst part was when I got back to the apartment. My mother hadn't come for dinner, and got back to the apartment, and I could see them sort of look at each other like, oh shit, gone a bit far this time. And then they colluded, and they went, because boys at school at the time had sort of started getting nosebleeds in like adolescence, I think and they just went, well, you did say you'd never had a nosebleed before, as if like, oh, we did always want a puppy. Yeah, exactly, honestly. Yeah. And so you're there and you're like, I know this is wrong, but and I know this is really weird, but also what can I do? I can't meet any of my basic needs. I'm in a foreign country. You are my parents. Like, I can't get fed, water, nothing. You know, I have to kind of fawn and stay with these people, as I used to think of them, these people. And like, you know, I have to kind of go along with this, even though I inherently felt it was wrong. So the shame goes into my system. And obviously the fear and other things, and that memory was just there on loop. So many times on loop. I could see his hand with the wedding ring going straight towards my nose, on loop. And I still, even though rationally, this is before I did the work on myself, I know, and I'm telling you two now, and you're finding it difficult to hear, I can see that. I knew it wasn't my fault, but there was at least 20-25% of me that thought, well, if I just didn't say that thing, or maybe I was bad, you know. When I do work with clients, if I can't see them, you know, if I put my daughter, who is the same, she's 7, if I put her in that scene, in that restaurant, in that chair, is there anything she could say or do that would be worthy of that reaction? God, no. Like, not at all. And, you know, that is the way that it helped me have self-compassion. I actually kind of couldn't generate it for myself because I was the one in the experience. But when you put someone else in the scenario, so what I'd like to offer to yourselves and the listeners is, there's a grey area. You put your friend in that bed. If there's a grey area, you put your friend in that corporate setting and you let them be screamed at in their face. If there's a grey area, you, like I say, you think of a niece or a nephew or a friend's kid that you're close with, and you put them in that childhood memory and you replay that scene with them, and you tell me if in any way, shape or form they asked for it or it was their fault. And that is a way that you can generate self-compassion for yourself, and self-compassion is the cure for shame.
Wow.
I can see how that would be so effective if someone was able to, visualize that. But sometimes we get so comfortable with those I am statements. They're your like uncomfortable truth, quote unquote, that you sit with in your head, and it's true, and you assume everyone else knows it's true, and you just kind of have to live through that every day. Part of taking away the power of that is something do you recommend saying it out loud to someone you trust, and I guess a close friend, and bouncing it off, and as soon as it's out, like maybe it diminishes its power in some way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, shame, if you tell stories that shame told you in safe spaces, like, it loses its power. I mean, it's Brene, shame, name it. I was in New York at the weekend with JB Copeland, and we did an event, and I started the event. I didn't let anybody do, everyone's probably thinking we're going to start chatting first. What I'd done was I'd stuck Post-its under everybody's chair with a shame statement on it. And it's a room full of people in New York, and I didn't let them, I asked everybody, and I stacked the chairs like a catwalk, like Fashion Week, down each side. And I got people in silence to stand up, take the Post-it, and take 2 steps towards a complete stranger and tell them what the shame statement said. So you've got this huge room of people going, you are disgusting, you are a failure, you are unlovable, you are bad. And then when we sat down, I said, look, the reason I've done that is, I said, like, how did that feel? And everyone was like, oh my God, it was awful. It was horrible to look in someone's eyes and say that to them.
And yet you do it every day.
How many times? Yeah, and then that's what we did. I got people to sit down together and talk about which ones we do the most, and how much worse it is what we say to ourselves. And I think when you are in connection with other people and you have that experience, and you feel that, and you see that, and you see that other people are doing the same thing, to me it's all about normalizing. Like, shame thrives if it thinks like it's got you alone. So it's a bit like a narcissistic relationship. Shame absolutely thrives and loves it if it can isolate you, because if that's when you'll believe it, right? That's when it's got its power over you. So if you can be in community and connection, even with like one friend, and you open up even a tiny bit, like just a tiny bit, and say, sometimes I feel a bit like this, it's just losing its power. It loses its charge. Think about like a phone battery. It just starts losing its charge. So yeah, I mean, that was a very, very bold exercise. I mean, I had one lady after that just literally didn't stop crying for about the first 25 minutes, and good, it needed to come out. And we have some public health in the UK. In the US, there's nothing like that. There is no help, and it's not necessarily regulated or quality. So I think the importance of bringing people together and creating community, and just seeing that you're not alone, is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, I don't know, it reminds me to also be careful who you bring that up with. Just like make sure that this person is, part of your support system. Because as we were saying before, like, if people bring these things up in, like, I don't know, a vulnerable situation, or like in a relationship where they are being manipulated, it can turn out to be a disaster.
A way to weed out someone who doesn't belong.
I just want to say that there are a lot of people who are very afraid and probably are in very unsafe situations. Go on a forum, change your name. You don't have to turn up to one of my things and stand in a room full of strangers. Like, that might feel way too far off for someone right now. Send me a DM. I answer all my messages. Reach out to you two. I'm sure you reach out to you two, send a message. But if you want to change your name, there are forums, go out there and name it there, and be witnessed and be held by a group, so there are places you can start. And exactly to your point, if you feel like you are in an unsafe situation, there are people and places that you can start doing that safely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's step one, I guess, identifying your limiting beliefs. Sorry, Laura, do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
I know anymore. You go.
The next thing is like, how does one start to undo that?
I think that's probably an individual journey. Like I say, if you've started to unravel the sort of control, or like that shame's got on you, and you start, one thing I'll say is when you start, you almost can't stop. It's like someone that's had too many drinks at a party and just won't shut up. Like when you start getting shame out, you literally can't stop. Like I've got a client, she's going in the book actually, and it's one of the most unbelievable stories. And if I was, when you read it, it's shocking, like so shocking. And she's going in with her real name because she hadn't told anybody about, sort of the event for 40 years. She's like, put my name in. Oh my God, because she's like, I want people to read it. There is hope, right? That this is possible. And she said that now, I'm laughing because she's hilarious. She's like, I have to stop myself at cocktail parties, like telling people, because it's not appropriate. Stop, like this is not like kind of, because she feels so liberated. When you
come out on the other side, yeah.
Honestly, and I can say the same thing. When the most anxious, the most unhappy, the most sad, the most trapped that I've ever felt is the moment before I've said the thing out loud. Like I want to leave my marriage. Like the moment before that I actually said it. I was toying with it. I was running over scenarios. I was like researching. I'm trying to find an answer. I'm going on courses. I'm reading books. I'm, trying to find anything to give me permission or give me anything at all. And the moment I was so anxious. I was so anxious and I was so unhappy. He's not a bad guy. It was the end of our journey as romantic partners. We're still parents to our daughter, but that was the end of that journey. And it would have been easier if he was a gambler or an alcoholic, but there was nothing. It was like death by 1,000 cuts in a different way. And before I said the thing is the worst I've ever felt. So I would encourage people from there, like I say, to just crack it open, however you feel safe to do so. And that's the start of healing yourself. Much more important that if one person sees this and if one person listens to this podcast and it helps them or someone they love, we've done a good job today. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing that's important.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful approach. I really want to ask you about your book because we have been discussing it like before here, and now you're like giving us little hints.
But don't really, yeah.
So we really want to address it and we want to like give it, the spotlight. How did you think about this book? How long has it been like writing it? I know it can take a long time, or for others, it can take a short time. So how has your experience been as a writer also?
Sure. So emotional is the answer, and more than I'd expected. I don't know sort of what I was expecting. I wouldn't consider myself an author before. Like I write for Instagram and I've written, that's more sort of shorter form captions. So actually writing and going into publishing and learning a whole new industry, which I have been learning. I've got the most amazing agent who is just incredible, Abigail Bergstrom from Bergstrom Studio. She's just unbelievable and like creates a really great space for me. She's also an author and has written a book on shame, called What a Shame. So it's like it couldn't be more serendipitous. It's been brilliant to be witnessed and held by her. And actually, I've got to say, and you will probably appreciate this, having come from a very male-dominated industry traditionally, I find myself now surrounded by like fierce women who are really advocating. And again, not to do down the guys, I've still got loads of really fantastic male friends, but it's a place that I'm really enjoying being in, and it's fairly new for me. So this is a really lovely space for me to be in right now. But the book is called Unapologetic, and it is about breaking rules. And it's the lies that shame told you. So everything that we're talking about here, but I'm doing it in idioms. So like, be a good girl, don't make a scene, like the elephant in the room. But I'm saying that we need to break these. Like, what does being a good girl, like what's the trap of that? So I'm going through each one of these idioms, and I'm either using client stories, like I mentioned. I've got a huge amount of incredibly brave clients, and a lot of them are going in with their real names. Got a lot of celebrities in there, a lot of celebrities. I've got some more interviews out, in fact, this week. So I'm still actually writing a little bit, just finishing off, like some edits and bits and pieces and final tweaks, and it's out in the new year, in 2025, and I hope it will bring me to Oz. That's my big dream, that I'll be able to do it as part of the tour, come over to Oz.
So that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we would definitely would love to be there, and we'll get your book and we'll get it signed by you.
Yes.
Oh, how exciting.
All the best for the release. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, they asked me, when we very, very first had the meeting, the team said, what's your hope for this book? And I said, the only thing I want that is if someone reads it, they come away feeling a bit less shame. Or you have that flicker of hope again that you don't have to feel like this. And there were some stories in there about me, some really personal stories. And frankly, ones that I could, given that I am a therapist and a coach, and probably will get a lot of grief for, maybe from the community, oh, who are you to say you're a therapist and this is what you were doing, or, blah, blah, blah. But I just think, fuck it. Like, it's too important. People are too important to me than, if I try and play by the rules of one community, then I'm missing everybody else. Like, it's not important. I need to say these things that I know are very real. Like, I used to self-harm. No, like I used to scratch at my face and like have blood running down my fingers, and that was in the breakdown of my marriage, because I now understand that it was a place that I felt safe. The showers where I did it, and it was very ritualized, but it was a silent scream, and I didn't have any way of discharging it, and that was how it translated for me. And that's why I wear makeup, and I've still got scars on my face and things like that. But I'm not ashamed of it anymore. And I know a lot of other people are going to resonate in some way. Like, I have a lot of stories in there about disordered eating, binge eating, the pull of it, the siren song of behaviors that are not aligned with our highest good. But in those moments, I understood where it served me. And I also talk about how I healed from it. But, that could have been something that I could have tried to hide, and I'm not. And I want to make sure that there's all these stories in there so that anybody, wherever they feel they are in their life, can see that and go, because the way that it cured it for me was going, oh my God, that's me. And then seeing a story and going, oh, I can get out of this. There is hope. I don't have to feel like this forever. So that's what this book is all about.
Being unapologetically yourself.
Exactly.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I honestly, you have been so open to share about yourself, about, your journey, and it just makes it feel like, we've known you for like so long now. Yeah. And it's beautiful because I guess anytime that I saw your content, as I said, I've been following you for a long time, and I was like, I can relate to this so much. And it is true. Sometimes, the things that we are most ashamed of are things that are like, people are going through that.
We're not
people
alone
are doing that. You're not alone. Yeah. And, if someone shames you for it, that's on them. That's for them to deal with. You come like so far, and it's beautiful to see that. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to hear your story. You have worn so many hats, and
yes,
it's inspiring to see how you went from, construction and property to now writing a book about, overcoming the most difficult times, or like the most insecure things you were about. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've loved being in this space. I thought it'd be like a bit of a treat for me, and it has been. I've loved it.
Oh, thank you so much. We have a question about how these, self-awareness and self-exploration is going to impact leadership. And I really want to talk about this because, as you're aware, leadership is something that we might be getting wrong in all industries, but in particular in the one that we're in, sometimes we face people that don't really have soft skills and all of this because they are very technical oriented, or because of the nature of the industry, they just don't have time to, lead like they would like to. Do you have any takes on how being self-aware is going to impact this?
Yeah, so there's actually a growing body of, should we say, interest and research about trauma at work. So that hasn't really been, should we say, formally addressed until now. But the reality is, a load of my big traumas were definitely from work. You talked about that, Rao. I've had people doing, like stand-up Barney, or seen things. And there's been a lot of things that happened to me during work. And then because perhaps there wasn't the awareness of it, or it wasn't being discussed, there also then wasn't the help available around it to best support. And so you just carrying on in like this, you know, and you're obviously highly activated, you're more likely to get unwell, your nervous system's all over the place, like you're not making quality decisions. If we look at performance coaching, you know, if you look at an athlete, they expend and perform, let's say on the weekend game, then they have days of recovery and active recovery and rest in order to be able to perform at their best again. And that's what I think we're going to see coming down the line, is sort of more efficient and effective patterns, but acknowledging that to maintain sustainable high performance, you need to correctly plan in for like deep renewal as well. And I hope that there'll be more of a place, self-awareness and permission. So I've worked at huge organizations where they've had all the stuff, right? Stand-up desks, green tea bars, sleeping pods, genuinely, like, you know, all this stuff, and no one used it. And no one used it because the leadership team didn't use it. So it has to come top down. Like these practices, if it's a self-awareness, if it's discussing trauma in the workplace, if it's talking about work-life balance, I don't believe exists anymore. I think it's whole life balance, and certain things are out of kilter and we just need to recalibrate. But we need it to come from leadership. So hopefully that narrative will change. Hopefully leadership roles will be recruited based on empathetic skills and emotional intelligence, as well as, say, technical ability, and be much more people focused, people leaders rather than business leaders. That's what I'm hoping for. There's quite a fun analogy that one of my really good friends uses, which is, imagine if the stock exchange knew the value of the business based on the health and performance of the leadership team. So, you know, if you were to look at a lot of leadership teams, like the board team, and you were to say run some tests on burnout, physical health, mental health, and imagine if the stock price was linked to that, you know, that's an interesting inquiry. Yeah. And I would love that sort of that was something that was taken on board, not to shame people or, you know, but just to encourage that you really do work on those foundations first so that you are able to best support the entire organization. So those are the sorts of, we're not far off some big chats about trauma at work and organizational responsibility in that, and then supporting the culture and population. So I think that's where we're gonna start seeing a bit of a shift.
We really love having you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
I've loved it. Like I say, I felt this would be like a really nice kind of reconnect for me, and I adored it. So thank you so much for having me.
So honored that this was the first time you kind of reflected on your whole journey and were able to share it. We are so looking forward to your book.
Yes,
if you could also leave links for like some of the YouTube videos that you talked about, that would be love to share it with the listeners.
We love to share all your content. It's amazing, and everyone's gonna be able to relate to some of your posts.
And
I know.
Help each other.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, girls. Have a rest of your evening.
Have a good rest of your day.